Okay, I'm not because it's now that's taken long. Okay,
This
here we
is
go.
actually a gimmick at this point because we have fucked up the show so good. Welcome to the House of Fuckery.
There we go.
It's
It's all good.
And you are, let's introduce this. This is season
All
2,
right.
episode 1, and we are fucking it up from the beginning because we always do that. But something exciting about this season is we finally have an adult to try to adultify our show. And we really appreciate it. And this is our new co-host. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, I've never been called an adult in my entire life. So the fact that I'm the adult in the room, I think it's very scary. But you know, hashtag adulting, so great. Hi, I'm Alexandria Tava. I'm very, very pleased to be a part of this group of misfit fuckeries.
There you go.
Thank you.
The Island Misfit Toys, right?
Yes, the island misfit toy.
And Bob, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. So I'll just introduce the whole show, right? Welcome to the House of Static. And I'm Bob. I'm in New York. That's Alexandria. She's in, we'll say New York. and of course, Kilo House in Los Angeles. And with us today, we've got Ignacio Molino, better known as Nacho, dialing in from, where are you calling in from, Nacho?
I'm in Rochester, New York.
Rochester, rock on. I'm upstate too. I'm
all
up
by
near,
myself. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
I'm actually in Queensbury, but like kind of north of Albany. That's where I am. And
That's
up by
great,
Lake,
man.
yeah, up by Lake George. That's where I live. And we've got Josh. Josh, I don't know your last name, Josh. What's your last name?
My last name is Nieves.
Okay, Josh
Yeah.
Nieves. And Josh is coming in from New Jersey, I believe, right?
Yeah, Jersey City.
Rock on. Okay. There you go. So that's what we're doing. The House of That. This is episode 1 of season 3, Kilo tells me. So that's what we're going to be doing today.
Definitely gotten the numbers wrong before, so I'm proud of myself right now.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. We used to that was a running joke in season 1 where we would one of us would try to guess what episode it was. We were always wrong, but this one is definitely 1. So we got that. Alexander, why don't you introduce Nacho? How about that?
Absolutely. Nacho, how long have we known each other? It's over 3 years now.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been here in the States for about 4, so I would say yes, a little bit over 3, yeah.
And I met you, you were living in Brooklyn, and we met at this alternative rock and roll factory sound studio, media center in the back end of Hoboken. And RIP, because unfortunately it did burn down, the Chambord building. Everyone's okay, but he was there as a manager producer role of Wicked Rock and Roll, shooting a music video. And I walk in and we just hit it off, and we shared like war stories of the music industry. And then I get to find out that you don't just have one, you don't just have 2. You have more than 3 Grammys. You're a phenomenal mix engineer. You've freaking broke down stereotypes and pioneered your way into, mashing metal, Latin music, and spirituality, which is why you and I connect. So let me back away and give the floor to you a little bit.
Okay, yeah, well, I right now what I'm doing is just mixing, and I do have some Grammys.
Some Grammys. I got a couple here and there.
More than any of the other people here, so you should be very
proud. Really, yeah, more Grammys than the rest of us, that's for sure. That's fantastic. What are the Grammys? What did you get Grammys in? What were they? What are the Grammys?
Yes, all of them are with the same artist. His name is Ruben Blades. He's a salsa singer.
He's a legend. If anybody doesn't know, Ruben Blades is a legend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, the funny thing is, like, a lot of people know him because he's also an actor.
Yeah,
But
yeah. He's on Fear the
yeah,
Walking Dead,
yeah.
you know,
But
yeah,
his
right now.
main his main thing is actually singing.
Well, guitar too. He's a phenomenal guitar player too. So,
Yeah.
awesome.
And yeah, so when was it? Because I just got number 8, Grammy number 8.
Grammy number 8.
Yes.
Nice.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
I
That's amazing.
still waiting for the little trophy
Yeah.
to arrive. But everything is,
Now, is it
running late as usual after all the craziness of the pandemic.
so was it for what in your role, like on this, the most recent Grammy number 8, was it producing, engineering, mixing, mastering? What was your role?
On this one was engineering. It was the recording side. Yeah.
Cool. Now, did Ruben come to Rochester to record?
No, I actually went down to New York City.
Oh, okay, cool. Right on.
Yeah, he lives there, so I'll just take the bus or the train and just go down there, and
That's cool.
I'll stay at his house, which is very nice.
Oh, you record at his house?
No, we usually record at Flux.
Oh yeah, I used to go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we usually record there, but then I spent the night at Ruben's house. Yeah.
Awesome, man.
That's
That's
me
great stuff.
holding Nacho's Grammy.
Oh, nice. Very nice. One of his 8 Grammys.
Yes.
That's fantastic, man. Really, that's really cool. Congratulations.
I really
Thank
feel
you.
like it's an honor to have you on the show and have the
Absolutely.
ability to talk with you, because I am the engineer for this guy over here. Like
Yeah,
he records himself, but I mix and master all of his stuff, and I mix and master the artists on our label. And it's like a passion of mine. So to be able to talk to someone like you who has actually succeeded 1,000 times more than me in that area is amazing, because I'm usually the nerd in the room going, I love just EQing stuff for hours and hours, and no one gets that, but I get it.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And I think probably if you won Grammys doing stuff like that, you probably get
Probably
it too.
like it too. Yeah.
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 Kilo call me up in the morning and be like, give me some tracks to work. I'm on board. I need to work on some music today. So I'll write songs so that he can have something to do.
Well, that's
the truth.
Awesome.
so well, hasn't it, Bob?
What's that?
I said that's worked out greatly, though.
Yes, it has. Absolutely.
So I want to know more about what got you into music, Nacho. And we haven't introduced Josh, the intern, yet. I feel like he's left out. I think he needs to explain who he is, because
Okay, that's a good point.
he hasn't done that yet.
Oh, okay. So out of everyone here,
Josh, how many Grammys do you have?
not enough.
NFT Grammys.
I don't have any either, dude. I'm just kidding with you.
Not enough. But
Soon.
yeah, so my name's Josh. I'm a senior in college right now. It's my last semester. Currently finishing up my degree in music education. And I've realized that now maybe teaching isn't for me. And I kind of sorry about that. And I'm planning on basically trying to learn how to like engineer and all that. But just like a quick side note, like I grew up listening to Ruben Blades. Like Siembra, the album is just Pedro Navaja, like all that stuff. Like, oh man, like I love everything about him and everything he does. And like the work, I don't know if you did that album, but everything he does is just amazing to me personally.
He's one of the greatest out there.
Mhm.
Yeah, definitely.
Without a doubt.
And his lyricism itself is just another otherworldly too. I ended up, I'm sorry, I'm just like talking too much, but like I did a project on basically how salsa came to be in one of my classes. And it was just so interesting. And like I'm reading about Ruben Blades and like the words he spoke, Siembra standing for other things, and like the whole story of Pedro Navaja and how that was like an opera at one point, I believe. And it's just like there's just so much behind it that it really moves me and it really inspired me as like a young musician. And yeah, I just think that music just has a lot of power in it. and musicians like that, they're just great.
Absolutely.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
they know how to write lyrics, and they know how to like um make the right combination of the words and melodies the um and the chords that are under the melody to give it the exact sentiment that it needs at a certain specific moment of the song.
Yeah.
It's he's just a master doing that.
Really
You know,
is.
that kind of touches on something that we talk about a lot, and that actually, since we've been hanging out with Alexandria, we've been talking to her a lot about as well, which is that notion of really what your podcast and everything is about, like how music affects you and how sound affects you and everything else. And Nacho, when you were talking about like how Ruben's writing songs and how the composition of a song, like the structure of a song it's all these multiple different parts, right? Like, so when you're writing a song, like, and I'm a songwriter, and so I'm putting chords together and everything too, right? And when you're doing that, you're exactly right. It's not just, you could bang out a 3-chord song or whatever, but if you want nuance and flavor and emotion and feel in your song, then you need to know what those notes, when you change, when you're in, what a minor key means, and what it means when you go into, if I'm going to change to a major 7th chord as opposed to 9th chord, why? You know what I mean? What's the effect going to have, and what's it going to do, and where's it going to take the song, and maybe you don't know at first, but then you do it and you go, there we go, but those decisions, that's what great songwriting is. You know what I mean? Knowing that moment, that twist in the song, and when to go. It's cool.
Exactly. And like a lot of people actually overlook this, but like when you're writing a song, just having the words with the accent on the right syllable on the melody
Right.
makes it so much easier for the listener to understand what the singer is singing.
That's right.
For
Just
sure.
like talking, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if you're talking to somebody and you say, oh man, I had a terrible day, right? Then you're saying you had a terrible day. But you said, I had a terrible day. Like, I feel like, what are you talking about? You're a robot. You didn't have any kind of day, but it's that emotion, it's the cadence and nuance that matters, it's cool.
Yes. And that's I mean, again, talking about Ruben, he's a master of giving the right expression for the right word in the right moment.
That's awesome.
Right.
I've seen him a lot of times when he's singing the last part of the song, which are the soneos, which is supposed to be an improvisation. But he obviously brings them to the studio already written down. And then sometimes he changes one note on one syllable of one word, and it gives the whole phrase another feel, and it gives you a better clue of what he means with whatever he's saying, just by changing one note on one syllable of one word of a whole sentence.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And I've only heard about this same kind of honor towards another songwriter, and that other songwriter is Sting. And I believe that the two of them have performed a lot together, correct?
Yep.
Yeah. How's that synergy? Did you ever get to see that?
No, I've never met Sting, unfortunately. I would really like to, but it just hasn't happened.
Have you come across any young up and coming artists that could potentially be carrying the torch forward, that have like a special sauce?
I mean, I think there are a couple, but as you know, this business, the music business is business, right? And a lot of artists do not want to drop the artist side to get on the business side of things.
Right.
So that's where I think more like the most of the people that I usually work with, who are independent artists, are they're just not jumping on the business wagon of
Right.
this I mean the business side of what we do.
Right.
So I mean, it's fine if you wanna like make it a way of living,
Mhm.
and you take it seriously and you make it a business, and it's fine if you want to have it as a hobby. But
Right.
a lot of them want to make a living out of music, either songwriting or engineering or producing or beat making or whatever, but they don't want to understand that there's a business side on this.
Right, it's a product and you got to turn around, and it's hard to switch, right? It's hard to switch, separate the emotion. We were talking about some of the music business horrors earlier today, and do you remember Tony Michaelides?
Yeah.
Yeah, so he came in and we were all talking earlier, and we touched on it, and I think, Bob, weren't you bringing up how House of Static's record label, how we're trying to, kind of like do good to the independent artists? I don't know. Do you want to add?
Yeah. So, so what we were talking about earlier is I used to work in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s. I worked with the major labels and worked, kind of in the business. And it was, it's a nasty business. It was a particularly nasty. It was a particularly nasty business back then. Because I was thinking about this after we talked too, like the difference, why it's different now, right? I mean, it's easy to say because of streaming, right? And that is why, right? But that's not what the difference is. Like the difference is that there are, because to your point, Nacho, right? When you're talking about like artists don't want to dive in and be business people as well as musicians, but it's too bad. They have to be, because you got to pay your bills. And if you want to be a full-time musician, you got to make some money somehow. And but what's great about what's different about the music business today as opposed to 20 years ago is that you can, right?
Yeah,
like indies were a novelty 20 years ago. They, you know what I mean? You had your Ani DeFrancos and your Frank Zappas, and they were about the only ones that did the indies that ever got big, and everybody else waited to get signed to a major. I mean, that's kind of, that really is it. Even the ones that got big on indies eventually, like REM, right? They flipped to a major once they got bigger. You don't have to do that anymore. You don't need a major anymore, and that's pretty groovy. So, but you do have to do the work, and that's the thing. That's what you're getting at, Nacho. And you gotta, like, it's those the flip side of that, the days of like getting a big record contract and getting a big advance and being a rock star at the gate. Those things they don't really happen. They didn't happen too much.
You don't even want it
now. No, exactly.
Because we all know, like, the jig is up. We know what you're doing.
But now there are ways to make money to do if independent musician is to take Nacho's advice and actually kind of buckle down and like treat it like a business. They have opportunities to do that now, right? You can sell songs to, there's a million ways you can get your songs into like commercials and YouTube and everything else to get monetized. You can play gigs, obviously, get studio gigs. Like everybody here, all five of us, right, are also not, we're all musicians, but we're also, to one degree or another, studio engineers, right? We're producers, we're engineers, we record our own stuff and everything, and sometimes make money doing that, right? And that's the thing. You can't just be a one-trick pony and wait for somebody to discover you. It's just not going to happen. You got to work.
What Alexandria was explaining was like how when our label does it, it's like we teach them stuff that we learned the hard way for me at least over 15 years, like for Bob however long, for her however long, but we're doing the work of showing them how to become an artist so that when they sign their first track with us, we don't just leave them there and go, here's a song, peace out, because they can do that themselves. So we know to like build them a website and build them like
and help them get paid. And that's really that's a huge difference between the old business and what we're trying to do now, because getting the artist money was not a priority of the record labels, let me tell you.
Not just
taking the artist money was their priority.
It wasn't, and it isn't.
It isn't, exactly. And so to Alexandria's point, to Keela's point, but that is kind of what we're trying to do, because we are artists starting our own label. So we have, equitable, fair, deals and try to help them make some cash and do some things, because
we know what it feels like on the other end, where
yeah,
we don't, they don't care and they don't do any of it because they want it. And I think that I personally believe the industry eventually someday, like years from now, can change over to that, because enough people will start knowing that, for instance, what she said, the jig is up, like we can do it ourselves. I think DistroKid personally was like partially when it started changing, when people could put their own thing out. And there's some songs that I've heard on TikTok that like TikTok blew it up, right? And it's a horrible, like I can't remember who it was, but it's a horrible song. It blew the fuck up, and the person put it out themselves. Like, so it's almost like the world is changing, hopefully away from that. But what it is going to take is people like ourselves. I mean, like, the top three of like showing the things they've learned along the way, of like the hardships that they've already gone through. I don't know. What do you think, Nacho?
Well, right now, I think we're at a point where the future of how the music industry is going to be is kind of uncertain, because even though there's a lot more of independent artists that are making it big and bigger, I feel that record labels still have a huge part of it, and they have that also. They have that power and that leverage,
and the marketing funds, because a lot that like you can be a good musician, but I know that in my own career, it really what has been my hardest hurdle has been the marketing. Not only the money but the contacts. It's like, and the know-how. Like if I knew that I had to be knowledgeable in marketing years ago, I would have took those classes, because I don't need classes.
But it's not only marketing. Then you now have to know about SEO and like some programming, even if it's simple stuff like Java or some stuff like that, to like create some certain things. If you want to go the full DIY way, then you have to know so many things, right? And at the same time, you still gotta keep writing music if you're a songwriter.
And not be dated.
And then it's like, for example, right now, I was talking to somebody that I met like a week before Halloween. I was in Salem, Massachusetts. So I was there with the guys from Wicked, because they had a gig and I was running sound for them. But then I met this guy who used to be a live sound guy that now works for Google as an acoustics tester engineer.
No way.
Yeah. But then I was like, dude, that can be, fun and interesting. Like, I have a minor in acoustics, so I could probably fit the profile if there's an open position. But then he goes like, okay, you have to learn Python.
Yeah.
Right? So what am I doing? I'm learning Python now.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh, I'm gonna learn Python, I'm gonna get a job at Google or whatever. No, I'm learning it because if there's an opening, it's good for me. But anyways, like a lot of companies are adopting that programming language now. So anyways, even if I'm not an expert at it, at least I know some of it, and then I can understand some stuff, right?
Yeah.
And this is in like this has nothing to do with mixing music.
Mhm.
Right.
It's what I do
Yeah.
for a living, right?
It's almost like learning, like when we do, like in grammar school, we do cursive or like learning it's almost, I wonder if they're going to start teaching this as a foundation course.
They should, you're right,
Yeah, but I mean, the thing with Python, with what I've seen, I'm not an expert, not at all. I'm literally a beginner, is that it's way easier to understand. Like the logic of the language is way easier than other languages.
right on.
So I mean, it's very logic, and it's very, I mean, as any language, it has a whole bunch of variables and whatever. But the variables and the names for the variables and the way that everything is structured is very I don't know, it's very logic for, like a person who has this side of like a good side of reasoning, in their brain. And also, for example, talking about, the record labels having all this power and everything, I mean, right now we're having another evolution in audio, which is basically a pushed one or a forced one, which is Dolby Atmos.
Mm-hmm.
That basically, like, a lot of engineers are just getting into Dolby Atmos because Apple is pushing their Apple Spatial, right?
Right.
Which actually takes the Dolby file and from it they make their own stuff for the head tracking and all this stuff for the Apple headphones or earbuds. But now, for example, if you release a song and you have the stereo mix and the Atmos mix, the algorithms on the platforms will give you priority,
right,
if you have that
over the people that only have the stereo file.
Really?
Which is,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I mean, there are a lot of things happening in the background that most people are not aware of, right?
Yeah.
Which, I mean, for me, it's still, I mean, it's not the same as it was, but in a certain part, like all these bigger companies still have the bigger side of.
That's a good point. Yeah, it's not just major labels now, but it is still the big companies. I mean, Spotify is massive. Apple is massive, more massive than anything in the world. And yeah, you're right. And they are the big guns pushing it around, without a doubt.
Look at Apple. Apple right now, they have their own DAW, right?
Yeah.
They have.
They do
basically
what's
everything.
they
could just buy everything out and just push everyone outside and just be the only one that makes everything,
But do you think every producer is ever going to go to Logic? I mean, I know I came from Logic, and the workflow that I use in Ableton and we use in Pro Tools is way better. Pro Tools and Logic are very similar, but I don't think I would ever go back to just using Logic, even though I know it very proficiently.
Apple owns Logic? Is that
Logic is
I didn't know that.
Apple owns Logic
I
since
see.
version 9, I think, was it?
Okay. Oh, they bought it. I see.
Yeah.
But also, I'm so sorry, but like I'm getting into this field, so like I'm noticing things that maybe you guys don't see because you already are there.
What I was gonna ask. Yeah.
So Logic is Apple, so you can only really do it on Macs. Avid also is kind of partners with Apple. So Avid and Pro Tools works the best with Apple computers.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
kind of.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, it's been true for since the beginning, right? It was always Apple. But I mean, I use Pro Tools on a Windows computer and have for the last few years. It works.
And if you have a background, and we didn't bring it up, which I think is important. You worked in IT.
Yeah, I was an IT guy forever. Yeah, right. But you're right. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong because you are right. Pro Tools wants to be on on a Mac, you know, and that is definitely the case. But they got better at making it for Windows. That's what they did. So, but you're right.
But it still crashes.
Yeah, it does crash. That's absolutely true. I think it crashes on an Apple too.
I mean, that's not a bug. That's a feature of Pro Tools.
It's a staple.
That's how they let you know you're doing something wrong.
Yeah,
right? No, that song sucks. Crash. Go and start over.
No, I think Pro Tools just keeps an eye on you, and whenever it feels that you're very inspired, exactly in the zone.
Yeah.
And like if anything makes any noise or anything would distract you, you would just drop out of the zone. That's when it crashes.
Yeah. Well, you know what the worst? You know what? Now if we're going to tell war stories about Pro Tools, the worst kind, because so Pro Tools forever, you had to have a dongle on your computer in order for it to run. So and if people don't know, it's just like a USB thing plugs in your computer, and you turn on your computer, open up Pro Tools, it looks to see if you got the dongle. It says, okay, cool, you can legally run Pro Tools. So then it'll open. They changed that though in recent 4 or 5 years, I think. And now it's on. You still have the dongle, but you don't need it. I have a dongle. I don't even plug it in because there's the iLock online. As long as you're online, and as long as iLock doesn't go down, because that's like another layer of crashing that Pro Tools has now. iLock has gone. That's happened to me a bunch of times where, like, you know, you're working on a song. Sorry, iLock is down for maintenance. Right. I'm not. You know, pain in the neck.
So, Josh, what were you saying? Oh, sorry.
But just before changing the subject, I think iLock sometimes lets you save the license in the computer itself.
Well, that's cool. I have
I don't know if
I got the dongle or online.
I don't know if every license has the option, but like some licenses from some plugins that I buy, when I'm redeeming the license, it asks me if I wanted to keep it on the cloud, which is the one that needs the internet connection. If I want to have it in the dongle, or if I want to put it in the computer.
All right. I want to do that.
I always choose the dongle, because then if I go somewhere else, I just take it and have everything, right? But I think some softwares actually give you the option of downloading the license to your computer.
Right. Well, you know, that's a good point, because there's so many like Pro Tools. I think again, like if folks don't know, you know, 20 years ago, if you wanted, you know, Pro Tools was a $20, $30, $50,000 investment. I mean, you had to buy, you know, especially if you had an analog tape, let's say a big 2-inch tape machine, then you got like Pro Tools would have like your Mac, and then like these rigs, like these, you know, like a whole cabinet full of shit that your computer plugged into, and all your board and everything plugged into that stuff. And I'm sure, I mean, I know that's still what they call it.
It was for the exclusive of it. And it was let's really work to get to that spot. It wasn't.
Yeah. Pro Tools was pro, you know, and you had to spend a lot of money to get it. Right. Now, I mean, I pay like $20 a month for a subscription. It's insane. You know, it's the world's very different.
Kilo and I, like, we're on really Kilo, because I saw both, but like, you're actually, you know, really good at it. And it's like, what's your setup? Like, when you broke into the industry, what was your setup? How did you get there?
Like, are you talking about what DAWs I used?
Yeah.
I went from Logic. Logic was the first DAW I used, which is like writing. It felt like writing in a notebook, right? And I was forced to learn, when I went through the curriculum at Icon Collective, Logic and Ableton, because they were saying like Pro Tools and Logic are very similar, and a lot of people are using Logic right now. So we're going to start there, because they thought Logic was going to start kind of pushing. I think they thought this, like, Pro Tools out, but they knew that if you knew these two, you could go into any studio and work any DAW at all. I think that's true, because I can look at either one and be like, oh yeah, this kind of does. Like, I saw FL Studios for the first time ever in my life last month, and I could totally work it because I knew these two. And so I went from that to being forced to pass a class and do an Ableton class And everyone else was like, I don't want to do Logic. And I was like, I can do it in my sleep because I like read the manual and taught myself for like a year. And so once I went over, though, I do want to say, like, once I went over to Ableton, I didn't go back to Logic because not because I think necessarily the plugins are better. I do like a certain EQ in Ableton, but Logic has like, you know, you can design your own reverbs, and that's a plugin built into Logic, like where you can do your like own signal response and like, you know, record the reverb and stuff. So that's cool. But once I saw the workflow in Ableton, my brain just works like Ableton. So I mean, I can work with other producers. I work with people all the time with other DAWs. And honestly, anybody out there that's like wondering, like, I don't know what I want to do. I like this one. They like that one. Just send stems back and forth. Like, it's not that hard to like go, oh, I have these tracks that I did. You want to work with them. You don't necessarily need the same DAW because I like to consolidate shit like all the time. So I'm working with audio, not MIDI. And so, yes, good question.
Well, it's like us. I mean, I work in Pro Tools and you work in Ableton, and we share music every day. That's how we do it. So, and you're right. I mean, just dump, you know, as long as you know your software well enough where you can maneuver things like, you know, export tracks as individual tracks or stems or whatever. So,
well, and like I've said on the show 1,000 times, that kid that's like at the club, high on whatever, like licking the wall, he doesn't care what
DAW you're using, yeah.
or what plugins you use. He cares that it sounds good and it feels right.
That's right.
So I don't know. I want to hear both of our interviewees what they feel about like the whole like DAW world. Like, do you feel like that's very important? I want to hear from Josh first to hear like the younger perspective of the whole what DAW is good, and then I'd love to hear yours.
Okay, so I've used Pro Tools, I've used a little bit of Ableton, and I haven't really used Logic. From my understanding and from what my friends do, a lot of people prefer Logic as like a stepping stone, just because Logic, they tell me, is straight to the point.
Yeah.
It's like everything's right in your hands. And I was taking a class where we literally just use GarageBand to make small songs.
Sure.
And I was like, this is actually really cool. And like going into like the whole like aspect of my major, it would be cool to use GarageBand in the classroom because you don't have to worry about instruments breaking down. You don't have to worry about all your kids like slamming on like snare drums or anything like that. They can just take the iPad and create their own songs. And plus, we're not just teaching them, oh, read off a stack of paper and then you can't do anything else. Just read what's in front of you. So you give them that ultimate freedom, which I think is great about GarageBand and Logic.
Right. Well, I think that Logic, you can learn Logic easier coming from GarageBand, right? So like you learn GarageBand young enough, like you're saying, that is a fucking great idea to go from that to Logic, because Logic also translates over to Pro Tools.
Yeah. And I took some coursework in computer music where we learned a little bit of Pro Tools, and I kept getting the iLock problem where I couldn't access it. I was like, I hate Pro Tools, I can't do this. And then I took a sound production course where I started editing like my first podcast, and we mixed for like a final. And I was like, this is amazing. Like the quality of the audio, the ease of use, because I was using it on like a big like Mac, like a computer, not just my laptop. And I was like, this is great. Since then, I've leaned on Pro Tools because Pro Tools, they made it more affordable now. It's only $100 a year compared to the $300 it used to be for artists. So like that's what I've been using, and I like playing with the waveforms, and to me it makes more sense naturally that way. I do have Ableton Lite that I use to practice loops, and I think Ableton is great for loops, and I've used that for my practicing, like for saxophone and learning like soloing techniques and all that. So I think they all have their uses. It's just down to what you personally prefer, because they all sound great, to be honest.
What about you? What do you feel like about exactly what you're saying? Because I kind of agree with his point of view, but I'm the next youngest one or something like that. So I may have gotten the same kind of teaching he got, you know.
Which
Well,
Yeah, it's not okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the most important thing is what are you gonna use the DAW for?
Mhm.
Some like Logic, Ableton, um, and Cubase are
Cubase,
way
that's another
easier than Pro Tools for making music
good. Mhm.
in the computer.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, because they are tools for largely used by like EDM producers, guys that are creating music entirely on the computer, like Kilo.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how Kilo works. Not,
me
but
as
guys
well
like
as that,
tracking like me, you're using Pro Tools. That's
Mhm.
kind
What's
Yeah,
funny,
yeah. Mhm. I'm sorry.
no, go ahead, sorry.
No, yeah, like if you're tracking real instruments or only mixing, maybe Pro Tools would be better for the tasks that you're gonna be using it for. It doesn't mean that it sounds better than Logic or Cubase or Ableton or whatever,
Mhm.
but I think Pro Tools is just, since its beginning, it's built as a tape machine mixer.
Yeah, I was just gonna
You
say
know,
that. That's the difference is that Pro Tools was born of the analog recording world.
Mhm.
It's built like that, and it is built like working in you know what I mean? Like it was the
Mhm.
natural evolution from like completely analog studios to Pro Tools to everything else, and that's kind of where Pro Tools was built up. So yeah, it feels very natural for somebody like me that plays live instruments and records live instruments all the time. Pro Tools I always end up going back to, I've tried them all, right? I haven't worked with Ableton, but I had,
Well, Bob,
bunch of
how do
different-
you feel about, because what's interesting about what Nacho was saying is like, I actually do everything in Ableton, and I'm the one you give stems to from anybody we work with to mix and to
Yeah.
master. So I mean, what do you feel like? Because just say we're all as good as me at mixing, like, do you think that it's a viable option for someone to be a mixing mastering person, Bob? Because you've experienced you doing it, or you having whoever that guy was pay, or you paid him to do it, and then you've
Yeah.
experienced what I've done for your brand and your music.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't speak to what Ableton is like to use, but clearly it is a useful tool for mixing and mastering because you're very good at mixing and mastering, and you use Ableton. You know what I mean? Because that's the answer in the end, right?
Yeah.
In the end, once you get used to whatever tool you have, then talent takes over.
I feel like I can add to this as well because I grew up around Pro Tools. I was in my first recording studio. Well, no, on the mix side at Sound on Sound, part of Sony with Jan Folkson, who won his Grammys off of Steely Dan. So I was around that world, but I have hands-on experience as a DJ, right? And then Sound Healer, putting it, exercising my skills as a producer with that. So I use Ableton. I think what the difference is that because if you approach and what Nacho was saying like before with being a little bit more logic based, if you really want to get that full audio experience and feel the acoustics, you're going to go Pro Tools. There's no negotiation. But if you want to paint, if you want to immerse do it, how do I want to use this? If you want a little bit of the product flip with less hustle or less complication, you're going to go to Ableton and you're going to get that product in and out, and it's going to be less of a dive-in experience. It's going to be not as time consuming. It's how do I want to say this, Bob? I feel like, yeah.
I think it was pretty clear. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
right. Definitely. I think so, and I think that I like I said, I think in the end, what really matters is who you are and what you're creating.
Well, and the
what's in your
product
plan.
is really all that matters.
Right. Yeah, that's
not
what I'm
even
saying. Right.
you or what you used, in my opinion, is what matters. It's like what actually comes out of it, right?
Mhm.
Like what And then, it's like, I guess, cooking, like, yeah, you have better skillets and stuff, but if you like put a cook that's only cooked like in an Asian eatery or whatever into like a place where they're grilling and doing smokers and stuff, it doesn't matter what they're using. They can have the best tools and still not make the same quality food
Right.
because they don't know how to do it.
And this brings up an interesting point, though. It depends on what you want as the person doing it, because you and I are very similar. We want a fast product. We don't want to spend a lot of time. We want to turn and flip, and we want hype, and we want reaction. We
Right.
want a fan base. You and I share that same thing. But Nacho was talking about learning a whole new language for
Right.
a technology company. And I wanted to bring that back because you have 8 Grammys. Why would, if you're willing to go a little deep with this, I want to know, how does it feel being someone with 8 Grammys in the world right now and having to even consider that you have to learn a whole nother skill set for what? Why?
Right.
Like, why would you even have to,
Well, the world is going faster and faster. Things are changing faster and faster. Also, the amount of people that have access to obviously a computer and a DAW
Right.
is like, I don't know, exponentially way bigger than, I don't know, 10 years ago. So yes, I have 8 Grammys, but that doesn't mean I'm not a regular person.
It doesn't mean you don't have to work.
That's what I wanted
anymore,
to
right?
get at. That's what I wanted to get at.
Right.
And sometimes, I mean, it's not that I'm bored of doing what I do. This is what I love to do. Mixing and like, being with music is what I love to do, right? But for example, acoustics is something that I like to do too. And talking with this guy was what drove me into the Python
Right.
subject,
In
right?
my view.
And I mean, I checked it out just to see, like, what's, I'm gonna check it out, to see what it is about, because I know like some programming languages are very complicated, and to be honest, I am not too patient, not even with myself. But then I saw a couple of like very basic beginner videos of how to do certain things, and it was like, oh, this doesn't seem as complicated as other things I've seen before, right? So then I just kept, either reading about it or watching videos about it, or whatever. I'm not doing it every day because, I mean, for me, it's I mean, it's not like a huge priority right now. Actually, right now, my first priority is actually going into being able to mix Atmos. So I'm also going through a certification course for that.
Nice.
And so, I mean,
Where do you go? Udemy?
let's put it this way. Selling music is no different than selling food,
Right.
or shoes, or soap. We've talked about this before. And what we do is not different than being a doctor or an architect or whatever. Technology keeps on improving, and you have to keep it up and study new things, because the technology just keeps on getting better. And if you don't keep yourself up to date, then you're just left behind, right? So my priority number 1 right now is going into the Atmos system. I already bought the processor for calibrating and aligning all the speakers. Next step is going to be buying all the speakers and getting them set up in the room. I hope I will be able to do it before the end of the year. But I mean,
Oh, I just noticed. Yeah.
Uh,
In your studio.
I have 8 Grammys, but but that doesn't mean anything. I just
Right.
gotta keep working.
You know,
I gotta keep talking to people and networking and talking to like to new prospect clients, because there are so many guys doing what I do,
right.
right?
Young people need to hear that, because even though there's a lot more transparency since social media and the internet,
Right.
there's still so much hype around it's like, and actually, Josh, I feel like you're even an outlier compared to a lot of younger people, because you take the time to do your due diligence and you take the time to research and study. But I've met so many people in college that are like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna do this. And then it's like, no, that's not how it works.
If I could just intervene, I used to just play music and expect to just miraculously get better and gig and go on all these crazy things. And like I had to step away from it because it was just making me, like, practicing every day was just making me stress out like crazy. And I took a break and I didn't touch the horn for months. Like, if you don't know, I play saxophone, and like I was gonna graduate, senior recital, all that, and I just stopped playing. I took a break, and then it was when I was like playing piano, not listening to music, and I realized I was learning music to learn music or to play music for me, and not necessarily to just show off my talent
Yeah.
or try to make it to something that I don't want. Like, you can grind all day to get to wherever you want to go or something like that, but if you're not doing it because you truly enjoy it, or you're just doing it for like the fame or something like that, to me personally, in my own opinion, I think that kind of takes away from what you're creating and what comes out of the work you put in.
100.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Like they say, it's called play for a reason. It should be fun.
Right.
You
Yeah.
should enjoy, you should be making music and enjoying it. And if you're not, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah.
and that's why I
Um,
don't like using, I'm sorry, but that's like when I talk to my friends now, I don't like using the word practice.
Mhm.
Like, I'm gonna go play. I'm not
just
gonna
playing.
practice.
That's right, man.
Right.
I never
Yeah.
practice.
Yeah.
I would say one thing that Nacho, when you were talking about why to learn new things and why to dig in and everything else, it reminded me actually of something Kilo was talking to Josh about in our earlier conversation, which is his advice to Josh was, be the guy that knows stuff, be the guy that knows how to fix things, be the guy that knows how to plug things in, be
And
the
if
guy
if
that
it's
solves
not,
the
then
problems.
be able to be the guy that learns it and can do it. Because
Exactly.
I've met people that literally started their career being that dude that was called and took all night to figure one thing out that some dumb person didn't turn something on in a big studio, and he was the dude. And so who are they going to call every time they need someone? That person.
Yeah.
Well,
What
there you have Andrew Sheps.
What's that?
You know Andrew Sheps?
Andrew Sheps?
Yeah,
Mhm.
mixer for Adele, Chili Peppers,
Oh,
and a
okay,
whole bunch of
cool.
people.
Yeah.
He actually started as a synclavier tech,
All right.
but he was the guy who knew how to run the computer, how to fix a
Yeah.
synclavier, and how
Yeah.
to do this and how to do that. So he was always in a session,
Yep.
Mhm.
and now he's one of the most famous mixers in the world.
There you go, man.
Well-
We talk about sometimes we'll do on the show, like I'll talk about the things that I've done, and it seems so disjointed and like, how did this guy do this and also be an IT guy? But it's because of exactly that idea. It's be the guy that figure out how everything's working, and then it doesn't matter what it is. It could be you could be working in a doctor's office, or you could be working in a recording studio, or
Right.
you could be working in some corporate office like I was. But if
True.
you know how the place is running, then
Right.
that's the best kind of job security, man. You know what I mean? Like, oh, don't worry, I'll go get it. You know what I mean? And if the reverb is broken, or the
Right.
light, the fire alarm's going off, it doesn't matter. Be the guy.
Well, what Nacho
girl.
was talking about actually reminded me of what I think was our first episode. We had Malachi, who our new host.
Malachi Mott.
We actually went to school with him, and he was talking about when he went to school having this one teacher that was very rigid about like, I think he was talking about like right, being able to read music. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry, but like something that he didn't think
you're
was
right.
super necessary, but like that this guy was rigid. And Malachi said the industry is always moving, and if you're not moving with it, you're going to be left behind.
That's right.
And I feel like your Nacho is saying the exact same thing. Season 3, when there's so much more technology out there now, that like if the industry moves, it's in a way to be better and more efficient, because at the end of the day, it is a money-making business. And I just think it's very interesting that we reoccurred back to that thing where if you're not growing with the industry, that you're the dude, you know, because years from now, if I just only use Ableton, blah, blah, yeah, it's gonna be like Reason or Cubase, where people are like, you still use that, you know, because things are gonna get
Like the
easier
industry,
and
I feel like.
easier. And
I remember
really
Cakewalk.
I agree with that though, like, because I mean, just having the newer version of Ableton, because my old computer wouldn't even run the old one. And I actually mixed a few of your songs, Bob, on that very horrible
I
CPU,
know.
unfortunate computer. But just having this new version, just it itself is completely better and completely different. And it's not different in a bad way. I want to tell our audience that we're not saying that they're moving it just to be dicks. Like it is actually moving in a easier and better direction. It's just we have to learn with it, and we have to move with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Have you guys tried or heard about Reaper, the DAW?
Yeah.
You know, that's
Reaper?
Reaper. Yeah, it's a DAW, but it's open source, so you can actually write your stuff on top of the software. So I was watching a video from this guy called Dan Worrell, and he was basically showing people how to like make a mid-side encoder decoder processor with code on Reaper.
That's
So
awesome.
it's like you already have a DAW that lets you like
Right.
write code on it.
Yeah, there's
You
another
know?
one too. I used to use a open source DAW called Ardor, ARDOUR.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because it's a Linux. I'm a computer kid. That right there, the Pac-Man. You can't really see, but I got Pac-Man on the screen there. That's a Linux computer, and that's I have got Ardor on that, and I recorded a whole album on using that open
What
source.
album are you talking about, Bob?
It was it was before you and I were working together. It was actually the one that you want to re-record, Built for Better Days.
Oh, that album is amazing though, and we're like gonna re-record it with real music, like more musicians added into it.
Yeah,
this is an amazing project. I'm so excited about. So
right, but I recorded that on an open source DAW. So I haven't heard of Reaper though. That's cool. But Ardor is it's like the same thing, but it's if you use Linux, you could.
Yeah, and Reaper is made by the same guy who did Winamp.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, well, the Winamp is old school internet open source technology. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I mean, this guy, and I don't know if he had business partners or not, they sold Winamp to whoever.
Yeah, right.
And now they're just making this DAW, and they sell it for like, I don't know, $60 or something, and it's like it's a perpetual license for it.
That's awesome.
I mean, a lot of people are using it. You can change the skins of the software. You can just make it look like Pro Tools and use the keyword shortcuts from Pro Tools and everything, but it's just crazy. Reaper. It's not Pro Tools.
That's awesome.
Yeah, do you guys know what Winamp is? Like Winamp was
I don't know what Winamp is.
Yeah. So Winamp was, if you went like the early 2000s, when people were when music was just moving onto the internet, people were just streaming and everything, and it was the MP3 like revolution, right? It was MP3s really that did it, right? So there was MP3.com, and there was obviously Napster and all the others. LimeWire, right? Yeah, LimeWire. Yeah, and you played those MP3s with Winamp. I mean, Winamp was the free download. You download. Yeah, and you could stream with it
Yeah.
too. You could do like the
Oh
first
my God.
streaming. I think the first streaming anybody did.
I
They did with
forgot.
Winamp. And you would just have. I used to do it, right? You would have on your computer, you'd have like a folder full of MP3s, and you'd have, I think it was an M3U file, which was just a text file that said, "This is the songs you want to play," and then Winamp would play those songs, and you could stream it online. It was pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
My
now
God.
it sounds like nothing now because that's what we all do all the time. But in like 2000, that was some big stuff, man. That was cool.
Yeah.
So
So that guy is the one who came up with Reaper.
that's awesome.
I've
Yeah.
heard of Reaper. I've seen
Yeah, me too.
it, but I don't I remember half of the things I do every day, so I don't really remember. But I know I've been in a studio where the guy was working with that. What? But yeah, that's but that's the thing, right? So it's always going to be moving in a different direction than you're sitting in right now. Like
Mhm.
somebody is using something that we don't know about probably right now, and if not, they're dreaming it up and making it tomorrow. Like, and I really encourage all of like all the people watching us, like, just be able to do what Bob taught me very well, which is like flow like a leaf down a stream, right?
Yeah, leaf on
Instead
the
of
street,
fighting
right?
it and going, I don't want to stay with whatever, like go with it because it's
Yeah,
maybe
have fun, man.
if I
That's
hadn't
what
gone to Ableton, I would be nothing that I am today. And that's
Right.
just going from Logic to Ableton. That really proves that point that like I didn't want to do it. Trust me when I say it was hard. And I had to have classmates who were actually already like signed artists help me with my homework for, it's funny to say homework, but really help me with my homework like the first like month or two. But now I use it every day because it's
now you're a
easier
wizard with it.
for
man.
me.
Yeah.
Right, but think about, I mean, if I had just said, fuck it, no, I don't want to go there. I know Logic really well. I haven't opened Logic on this computer at all. So, I mean, I think this was a great conversation about how music is always moving. Like, obviously, we'll always have the same type of things like guitars, right? Those are going to stay because they're physical objects. But I think what we're really saying is your computer is your instrument. It doesn't matter
Ending.
like what kind of strings you're using on a guitar. It's still that guitar. I mean, it does, but you know, like using better and better things. If you look at it as I work on this computer rather than this DAW, because I know I do the same
Yeah,
thing.
it's a perspective change, which makes
Right.
sense with the evolution of all of it and media creators.
Neil Young, I saw Neil Young one time in an interview. He said that every guitar has a finite number of songs in it. And this is an analogy. You could apply it to your DAW, you could apply it to computer, whatever you're doing. But every guitar has a certain number of songs in it. He's like, so when a guitar runs out of songs, I just go pick up another guitar and then I can write.
Right.
And it's like
That's a good
true.
one.
It's really true. I mean, you pick up a different guitar, you write differently, you play differently,
Yeah.
Different
you
feel,
know?
different perspective,
If
right?
it's warm, you play differently in the room. If it's cold in the room, you play differently. If it's humid, I mean, all of these things affect, you know, so that's good. And mix it up. I guess that's the point, right? Is to
Mix it up.
Yeah, all these things. Yeah, right. Yeah, no pun intended. But I mean, all these things really like when you ask Nacho, like, why learn that? I mean, the truth is like obviously it's good for your career. It's a smart move and everything. But if Nacho wasn't the kind of guy that liked to learn stuff, right? Then he wouldn't be doing it. Like,
Yes, and that's what gets you the Grammy.
it's fun.
Sometimes it's luck, but it's the momentum for it, and you connected these two together and you made it happen.
I love that we have like the spiritual side of where because there'd be me and Bob going blah gear, and then we have this thing saying it's this and this. No, it's a good fresh way to look at it because we aren't necessarily always. I am not always that way. I'm very, almost militaristic of like this track goes here and this and Bob, you better label things right so I can put them in the right order. But at the end of the day, it is still a very felt art. Even
That's why
I
we do music.
Oh, for sure. I would
All the
rather-
music because it first touched us, and then we applied X, Y, and Z. And if we forget that, then we're just as bad as the big man who's over putting all the strings on everyone in the industry. And I think that's why people love indie, because we remember that, right?
I know.
Well, I mean, that technically, because that was gonna be my question, kind of leads us into my favorite part of our show. I don't know if we explained it to them before we went live, but like where we do a round robin of like, used to be last season, it was like one industry question each and one like random person question each, like random thing. But I think tonight, especially since there's 5 of us, we should do one that's kind of the mix of the two, where
Yeah. Any
like,
question you want, make it about music or not. How
Sure.
about that?
because at the end of the day, because we make music, it may affect us in a certain way, and it may affect someone out there that may identify with whatever that thing is, make music. And that's really the goal, is to just get people to realize, I mean, Nacho doesn't know this about me, and neither does Josh, but like I was a one-handed metal drummer. Like I play drums from a wheelchair. Drumming made my legs start working better. And like, so yeah, it's like, if I can do it, I don't give a shit what you say. I don't give a fuck. You can do it. So
Right on.
yeah. So okay.
I think all of us have a metal background. No, Josh, have you ever played in metal?
No.
No, I didn't.
But
I'm not.
fuck that. Fuck
Okay.
I'm a hippie.
3 out of
I
5.
don't
3
play,
out
but-
of 5.
But so real quick though, let's like real quick. I'm just gonna run through what the question thing is, right? So we each, so we go around. Everybody asks a question, any question you want. In this case, you just ask a question, and then we all have to answer it, and you have to answer your own question. So if I say like, hey, what's the most embarrassing thing you ever did? I have to answer that myself as well.
Right.
So I'm not going to ask that question.
You don't want to answer, right? So you
Right,
can't.
exactly. Yeah.
We made it this rule because of me. I understand, but it's so that if you're willing to answer it, you can ask it.
It's
But
good. It's
not
fun.
right.
You
Right.
should start it, Keela.
I will because I have a great question because of what she said. I think my question, this is the only time I've ever been like, I'm prepared with a question. My question is, what is that one song that touched you that made you decide you're going to do music? Because we have someone new here and someone that's been doing it for years, and it will be interesting to see where the fuck did that start? That one song, which Bob might know my answer and is gonna make fun of me, but it's okay. Go ahead and let's hear from Josh first, because he's like the youngin', and then
Poor Josh.
no, it's okay. I want him to feel like he can talk more, and he hasn't, and so I'm kind of giving him.
So is it specifically you're looking for a song that inspired? Because it
song,
might not be, maybe
a
it's a band or whatever.
a song, a band, a concert, a musical thing that touched you, that went
Right. Something in music that
that
made you.
moment you went, I'll fucking do music until I go broke or whatever.
Yep.
To be honest, like I grew up in a very like Hispanic home. Every weekend you would hear salsa, and I can't tell you a specific song. I
Right.
wish I could. Maybe it's Brujeria actually by Gran Combo. Everyone knows that song if you're from like a Latin community. And I just remember like it would play every week, and then it would play at every festival, and then it somehow became like this. It's from the 70s too, and I'm 5 years old in 2005. 2022 people are still listening to it. And it just like it just hits me, and it literally reminds me of home and like my family and all that in a strange way. And like the way those guys play, the way they have swing, even though it's salsa music, they really changed everything. I just have a deep appreciation for salsa. That's what I grew up with, and that's when I realized like this is something that I really do love. Like when I was in high school and I was learning like saxophone, I was like, I'm gonna be in a salsa band. I don't care how I do it. Like this is what I'm gonna do. And it's just the way everything sounds, from the sound of the trombone, like Willie Colon solo on I think it was Buscando Guayaba, like Hector Lavoe, all these people, Frank Luis, like for as much as like I didn't understand the words, it really struck a chord with me. And I remember my mom explaining what brujeria meant, and I was like, whoa, this is crazy. Like it was just the way I can't put a thing on it. I really can't.
Explain what it means to people who don't know.
So brujeria in a short sense means like witchcraft in a way.
Bruja,
But yeah, because bruja means witch.
yeah.
But this guy in the song was basically saying, I'm so in love with you. It feels like you put a spell on me, basically.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Tu me hiciste bruja." You did like witchcraft on me.
That's
And
good.
then
But the way they sing it sounds so fun. You know,
yes,
it doesn't sound
Fun.
dark at all.
Mhm.
What's
That's the
so
funny thing.
cool is you didn't know the words, yet the song affected you deeply enough that you're sitting on my podcast
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
That
that's
is
cool, man.
so epic to me. You have no idea, because it's not that you heard cool lyrics that meant something to you. Because I have albums like that where it was like some like song that was about something I didn't experience or even know, and then the music behind it made my inside be like, wow, that's cool. That's
Right on.
awesome. That's a great, great answer.
Yeah, it's a good answer. Right on.
oh, thank you.
Mhm.
So,
All right. How about you, Nacho?
Well, I mean, I have a very similar background to Josh's. Uh, I grew up listening to Tito Puente and Celia Cruz and all those
Oh,
people from the same era.
yeah.
Um, but I still, at that moment, I still didn't realize like I wanted to do what I'm doing right now.
Right.
I do remember at some point one of these record labels put out a Beatles tribute, but all in salsa.
Oh, nice.
oh,
And
that's
I remember listening to the album, and that was the first time that I have a collection in my mind that I was listening to music, and
Mm,
then I was able to kind of like hear the texture of the instruments because the recording was so good.
Mhm.
Um, and then what really made me just really dive into the recording aspect of things um, was when I had my first studio experience as a guitar player for a band. Um, and I mean, we were recording this album that was like a compilation of punk bands. So I was probably 15 or 16 years old, and just seeing this whole thing, like like you place a microphone and it goes to the recorder. But in I mean, in order to go to the recorder, it has to go into the console, then to goes to the recorder, and it comes back on another channel of the console, because it was that time where I mean, we didn't have computers. We had ADATs.
Right,
We were
yeah.
using analog tape. So I remember in this studio they only had one ADAT and one 16-channel Mackie console. So basically you had 8 channels to go into the recorder and 8 channels to mix what was recorded. and and I was like, this is interesting, you know. And later, what like really caught my attention sound wise
Mhm.
was listening to what is my favorite band right now, which is Pantera.
oh, yeah.
Nice.
Mhm.
Again, sir, I knew we were friends at the start.
Yeah, man. Dude, I even have a Dimebag guitar in my garage right
Yes,
now,
you-
which is has been sitting there forever. I need to get an amplifier and start playing again.
Well, that's interesting because mixing metal is quite an interesting task. It is
Oh, yeah.
isn't impossible, and I've even mixed metal guitar into EDM, but it's something different. It's and getting that using them as an example is very cool to me, because the thing you do, you would have to do very well, because you can really mess it up, because you either take too much out of certain instruments, which I did at first with Bob's guitar, took way too much mid-low range out of the guitar to make space for the bass. But like it is almost a different world completely, and that's a really great example. Like, can you tell us why that listening to that really got your ear, like you were talking about?
Well, I remember the specific. I mean, I don't remember the date. I remember the day, like when it happened.
Amazing.
So we were driving around. Okay, in Panama, there's a place that it's a valley. It's called the Anton Valley. Okay, so back then when we were 15, 16 years old, that place was a very calmed place, not too populated or whatever. So a friend of ours, he would borrow his dad's car and he would pick us all up at our houses, and we would just drive around the town listening to music, like blasting the heck out of the car, right? And I remember listening to Cemetery Gates, right?
Yes.
And right after that comes Old from Machine Head, which is in the Burn My Eyes record that has the famous song Davidian. Yeah, the song the song that caught my attention from Machine Head was Old, which is the second track of that one. And I remember that day, those two songs, and I didn't know these bands at the moment. So like when I heard the second song, I was like, dude, what the fuck are we listening to?
Right. That's that moment. That's
yeah. And then I'm like my head just went like, you know.
I know that feeling for sure.
Because it's like, I mean, we're talking about two metal bands that sound completely different, but like the sounds are not the usual natural sounds that you would get from, let's say, Led Zeppelin, right? So like drums sound way more processed, guitars sound way more processed, everything sounds, you know. And then right after Old, you get Replica from Fear Factory, from the Manufacturer album.
Yes.
So then you just go like, you know, from process to more process to like, you know,
all the way smushy smashed. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're like, is this real? Is this for real? Like,
oh yeah.
Like I hadn't listened to music like that before, right? And that day, it's like, you know, that's when I was like, I need to know how to do this.
Yes. It's interesting. My answer actually will be a metal answer as well, and it's almost that same thing. As someone who's done music and does music all day, all the time, and it's always that song that is kind of what you expect, but something. That's why I like mixing and mastering, because it's when something is a little bit different in either a better way or something is in a worse way that makes something sound better. It makes my brain go, wait, what's going on? Rather than just what you expect to be listening to, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
So what about you, Alexandria? What song or experience or thing made your brain go, oh shit?
I'm gonna come from the perspective of purely the female singer. Okay. I was in kindergarten and I had a really, really, really big soulful voice for the little wee size I was. So the teacher allowed me to, I think we had flowers in the class. I guess we were doing an assembly. So the teacher allowed me to go to each classroom and give a flower if I sang Whitney Houston.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh, nice.
So I sang I'll Always Love You, and I gave a flower to everyone. And then I declared I was going to be a star. And, you know, I learned rock and roll later on, but Whitney was my first love.
That's
so
awesome.
I was like, you know.
You can't go wrong with Whitney, that's for sure.
That's awesome. What about you, Bob?
Sure. Yeah, you know, mine would be probably complicated. I mean, like for me, music and like technology and everything is all kind of always been intertwined. Like, and I'm a geek. I'm a computer geek. I'm a Star Trek geek. I'm a music geek, right? So they've always been like all together.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so like I recorded before I knew how to play. Like I used to I grew up, I'm 52 years old. I was born in 1970. I grew up in the 80s essentially. I was 10 years old in 1980. I was 20 in 1990. So I grew up in the 80s and I was taking new technologies and old technologies and plugging them into each other and seeing what's going on. You know, I was making analog phones work with like, you know, stereo systems, and I was making computers work with, so I was doing that all already. And then I got into recording, but then, and so that's like when I was little, right? And I was like, you know, preteen and young teen. And then I was like 15 years old. I was at I worked at Caldor. Do you guys remember Caldor? Caldor was a department store. And I worked at a department store. I was like in the warehouse, and I was 15 and my buddy was 18. And so he was older and cooler than me. And he was in the break room with his acoustic guitar, and he was a dork. I mean, he's a skinny, nerdy, ugly dude, right? Not ugly, but he wasn't a hot guy or anything, right? But he's sitting there playing his guitar, and there's like every hot girl that works there is just sitting there watching him play. Like, oh my God, you're so cool, Tom. And like 10 minutes before, he was totally not cool. You know what I mean? He was just another dork, but he got that guitar and he was the coolest freaking guy in the mall at that moment, you know? And I was like, that's it. That's it. I'm going to get a guitar. That was it. I've been playing guitar ever since. It's an absolute true story.
That's what music does for people, is like they can, instead of, because I'm in a wheelchair, right? I'm going to say from my point of view, for myself, I could have just looked at myself like that, right? If I didn't find music, I could have ended up with a bad attitude about life and stuff like that. But I do think when you have that thing you're doing, it shows the real you, not like the you that like you seem like on the outside. And I think not only was it like, you knew you were cool, Bob, or you wouldn't have done that and gone, I can do that and be cool. I'm sorry, but you're like,
there was very little cool about 15-year-old Bob Smith, but he was a great kid.
Most musicians, cool. Most of us are not cool.
No,
I'm not cool still. I just act like I'm cool, and I'm not.
So no, we all act like we're cool now. I mean, yeah. 52-year-old Bob thinks he's the greatest freaking dude in town, but you know, he's really the same as that 15-year-old dork. You know what I mean? That's really true.
Now who's the adult Bob?
Yeah, adult Bob just has better toys, you know.
Exactly. Well, yeah, we can see your toys. We see all the guitars.
Right on, man.
Yeah, no, but Bob, I mean, it's like back to what we talked about earlier today, like knowing your worth, right? Like you almost, you know, like the attitude you're talking about right now, you almost had even up till you met me, not because I'm awesome, but maybe I'm a good mirror.
No, you are awesome.
No, well, I'm not floating my boat. I'm floating your boat, because you realized one thing that all of the people here have to know is Bob has said to me, it's like, I made him grow as a guitar player, because when I'm trying to have him give me a punk riff for a trap track, or like a metal riff for whatever the heck that genre that we made is, like, that's not an easy task. And but I think that showed you that I am a guitar player, you know, even better than you thought you were.
No, no, it's well, you know, and that's a really good point. And it's because what Kayla's talking about, we were talking earlier, and I was saying how I'm self-taught in everything I do. I mean, self-taught computers, self-taught computer guitars, and recording everything. So, what I was explaining earlier is you get a funny, you know, you have a funny opinion about yourself that way. You're you're very confident, arrogant, is even, you know what I mean? Because like, hey, I did all this shit myself. Screw you, you know. But at the same time, you're also always a little bit insecure, you know, because you're working with people that went to college for, it's like being a cook, working with, people that went to the Culinary Institute. You know what I mean? You might be
Right.
great, but you're going to be self-conscious all the time because you're working with professionals that have degrees or that have 8 Grammys, So,
Right.
yeah. So like what I was the point of the conversation Kilo and I was having was basically that working with Kilo, and then by extension, kind of expanding out of just being like a guy alone in his recording studio, but actually networking and collaborating with so many people has ultimately made me a better player because I'm more confident, because I'm like less insecure about myself and I just play, and it's made all the difference in the world. Yeah, so there you go.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to give my answer, and mine will be short since I asked the question, but I think I could say like the first thing I liked was like King of the Road, right? I can say that I listened to that whole record over and over again, the Roger Miller record, or I can say like, what Bob would make fun of, which is I love the
make
song.
fun of you.
I love the song All Star by Smash Mouth, and that just made me happy. Or I can say Blink too. But the real moment where I was like, I want this and I will always do this is when I went to my first metal show, and I had been to maybe 2 shows before that. And I go to this show and I'm like this, emo. I'm emo guy, with like the tight jeans, and I'm all emo with the hair and the stuff. And then I go and there's all these metalheads with like hair down to their butts and like the big baggy pants and I'm like, oh no, I was in high school. And I go there and I think the band was like either Avenged Sevenfold or Murder by Numbers or something. I think it was Murder by Numbers, but like they were playing and I was in the back so I wouldn't get smushy smashed by the mosh pit. And a bunch of guys came and they were like, you want to go to the front? And I was like, no. And they like made a big space, like a hole for me to go all the way to the front. And then they stood like around me so that then like nobody could like march into me or jump off the stage into me. And I finally felt like, oh, I found my people. I found like what I want to do is give people that kind of togetherness feeling of like, oh, we're all doing like this, because I thought they thought I looked weird because I didn't have black pants and a black shirt. I'm wearing blue pants now, but I usually have black pants and a black shirt now. But it was just this amazing like feeling to me. And then I was like, music forever. So there you go.
Awesome.
That's
Right
my
on.
story.
All right. Well, we are at an hour and a half now, so we probably should be wrapping it up pretty quickly, I think. What do you
Yeah.
think? Kilo,
It's up
Alexandria.
it's up to you too. I mean, I took too long with my long ass question, but
No, it was all good. I think it's good that we're just doing one question because it's getting late now. So, anything you guys, Nacho, anything you'd like to say before we go? Any final thoughts?
Well, we've been talking about, the love for music, all the passion, liking, and all that good stuff, which is the good side. But I just wanted to touch a little bit on the side of what I do, which is basically service,
right.
which is, I mean, it obviously involves me doing what I like to do, but I'm doing it as a service for somebody else. So, sometimes you have to do things that you are not completely, like you wouldn't regularly agree to do, but that's what the client wants.
Right.
In the sense of, I want more lows in the bass, and I'm like, dude, that bass is already fat.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, well, but he's a client, he's paying for it, so you just find a way of adding more lows to the bass without making it worse somehow.
I know that.
Sometimes people just want stuff that you're not, that it's probably not what you would do with things, right? So besides being the guy that can always fix it or
Yeah.
know how to connect things or whatever. If somebody asks you for something, don't argue it. Just say
Right.
yes and just do it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pick your battles, which
Unless
is
you're the producer.
Yeah,
If
exactly.
you're the
But
producer, you
yeah,
tell
but if
them no.
yeah, but if you're engineering or something like that,
Right.
you have to be conscious that you're not number one in the room,
That's
Mhm.
right.
right? Number one could be whoever else, because it could be the artist, it could be the producer, it could be the A&R, but
Mhm.
you as an engineer, you're not.
Mhm.
You're the guy giving the service, right? So
Right.
that's one little thing that I would just wanted to add to is just, if you're doing this as a service, just if somebody asks you for something, just go for it. I mean, unless they're asking you to do something that you shouldn't do in terms of,
Right.
Right.
you
Right.
know, committing a felony or something like that. But
Yeah, right. Nothing immoral or illegal,
yeah,
but
but
if they want more
but
bass, give them more bass.
yeah,
Right.
but when it comes to music, if they want something louder and it's already as loud as, I mean, it's like, for example, I want more of my voice, and dude, it's already your voice
Right.
and the band. Just
Mhm.
make it louder, you know?
I like the trick where it's like you do it or you say that you do it and you send it back. Oh my God, this is the best thing I've
Right.
ever heard. It's like, yep, I put it up.
Or just turn the whole track, the backing track down so they think their voice is louder. I've done that. Then
Oh
they
yeah,
went,
yeah. But I mean, anyways, somehow you're actually turning the voice up in
Right.
relationship to the music. So yeah, it's it if you go into the service side of things, then just say, I mean, if you know how to do it, just say yes and just go for it,
Right.
because
Mhm.
if people feel comfortable working around you, and if people feel that you solve their problems and that you fill their needs, then they're going to hire you again.
Right.
If
Right.
you start arguing with the artist or producer that you're working for,
Mhm.
you're done. That's probably your last gig
Right.
with them.
Right. Right. Before we hear from Josh, I have to say I do agree with him, and that's how I've gotten these two wonderful people around me, is like I will do whatever they want. Not, I agree, and I'm not saying like because
Your
they're
cool
paying me,
glasses.
I'm saying I do like how they see it because they're the artist at the end of the day. And if a client's paying, obviously you have to take your ego. I think what you're saying is when you're doing it in this way, and I see what you're saying because I'm an engineer as well. Like you have to take the ego out of it because at the end of the day, it's their product. They get what they want. You know.
Their face is on the album cover, not
Right,
yours.
right, right, right. Their name goes on the album cover, so they want to just put a limiter on the bass and make it as loud as they want. Okay, that's what you want.
Or maybe they complain about reverb all the time.
Okay, but that's my fault.
No comment.
But that's a great example. Bob will apologize to ask me to turn reverb down like
Yeah.
6 times, which is not a big deal to me. But
No,
like,
no.
like,
But
oh,
Kilo and I have like that's
very
the
much
one
so.
place we have different opinions. I mix things
Yeah.
pretty dry. I like a kind of dry rock and roll kind of sound, and Kilo likes reverb. So he's always giving me something. I'm like, all right, less reverb there, less reverb here.
But I've tried to learn your taste. One thing I've learned is listen to like what the person has done before, so that then like, oh, they don't like a really wet sound, or they don't like the certain ways you may do reverb yourself, because putting your ego in it, which my ego is, let's just put reverb on everything as loud as they can on my music. Right. But that's my music, not Bob's music. And I love what you said, Nacho. It's their face on the cover. So just do what they want, not what you want for them if you're in that route.
Yeah, and
Great.
you will, for sure, you will learn something that day, because you will be doing something that you would have not done
Correct.
if it was by if you wouldn't have done that. So now you have to figure out how to do what they want.
Right.
And
So
you will learn and you will learn sometimes that you actually maybe were wrong. You know what I mean? Like you're
Yeah.
right, you know, like,
Yeah.
hey, that was a good idea, artist, you know, because that
Yeah.
happens too,
Yeah.
you know. So
Just
rock on.
give you a
Humble
real-
thyself.
Yeah.
Oh, how this music industry will teach us, right?
Yeah.
right,
So,
right.
Josh, your final thoughts, my friend. Do you have?
I don't have much to say other than like this is just like an eye-opening experience for me. Just because like to hear it from everyone else, like who's already done it, and I'm just like getting my foot through the door, or like not even at the door yet, you know, I'm just editing like audio of
Right.
people talking. It's just like it's kind of exciting to me at least.
Well, I
And
think,
like
you know, if anything you can take away from this, Josh, you realize that we're all really still just putting our foot in the door. Even Nacho, who's got 8 Grammys, is still like learning
Right.
new things and getting his foot in the door in a new industry.
Yes.
That's
If
what it's all
you
about.
don't
So where
look
you
at
are
it,
is where you
right.
will always be, but you're just going to keep going to different places, you know? You're like, okay,
always
now
wish-
I'm new here. Now I'm
It-
new over
You
here.
excited?
Yeah, it will never end.
That's right.
And the day that you don't feel like that, that's when there's a problem, right?
Yeah, really. What's going on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Before I
awesome.
went to Icon, I thought I was a producer, and when I left, I knew I was not. And I never have felt like, you know what I mean? Like, because there's always a new thing, there's always a new person. So at least you're like, so maybe you're on the same level as us because we're learning different things at the same time. You may know things that we've never even heard of.
I'm sure that's true.
Yes.
Yep.
We're
It's
breaking
me.
down the hierarchy. That's my job.
Exactly.
Yeah. Literally anybody can learn from anybody.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I think we all
100%.
learned a little bit today. How about
I
that?
learned a
Oh.
lot today.
I definitely learned a lot too.
So much out of it.
Hmm.
I appreciate our guests being here. Obviously, my co-hosts, I appreciate them being here. And I am going to say thank you guys for watching or listening or however you consumed this wonderful podcast about DAWs and all the stuff our brains love talking about
There you go.
all day, every day.
Yeah, this is like the nerdiest episode we've had.
I love it.
It's great.
I love it. My brain was like, oh yes, please tell me
Yeah.
more.
Fabulous.
Josh, Nacho, thank you both so much for coming, and I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you for having us, man.
Right.
I
Really.
know, thank you.
Good seeing you again, Nacho.
Good
Josh.
seeing you again too.
All right, folks.
Thank you
I'm gonna
again,
hit the
Josh.
button. I'm gonna hit the button. Good night, everybody.
Yes.
You hit the button, Bob.